So another NBA All-Star Weekend has come and passed with the 2025 edition that just took place in San Francisco. Thought I'd talk about it because I've never talked about NBA All-Star Weekend on this channel. And yeah, the NBA All-Star Weekend has just gone down and down and down as the years have gone by, to where players just give less and less effort when it comes specifically to game. You have stars not competing in the dunk contest. So there was major changes made this year in order to helpfully make things better for the overall weekend. Did it work? Well, I'll go kind of day by day with it. With the Friday thing, with the rookie game, the Rising Stars game, I've never really cared about that. These are a lot of stars that no one really knows. I mean, it's a great showcase for them in terms of showing what they can do and all that, but it's always the event that I just don't pay attention to at all. I'd honestly rather watch the celebrity game on the Friday than watch the Rising Stars game on the Friday too. And it's not like I watch the celebrity game, but whatever. Friday is always kind of a dud for me. But All Star Saturday night, man, that used to be something I always look forward to as a kid when I started getting into basketball. Just the spectacle, the slam dunk contest, the stars taking place in it, 3-point shootout, all that. And these events now, it's just kind of a really just kind of mixed bag, and that's being kind. The whole skills competition, I think, is just like way too overcomplicated now. All this stuff going on, all these shenanigans. The funniest part, though, was Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama from the Spurs trying to pull some shenanigans where they barely just kind of threw the ball in attempt to shoot to sort of get the shots off quickly, and they got disqualified. That was kind of funny. But besides that, it's always been kind of a lame competition. Or actually, no, it didn't always used to be a lame competition, but it's just kind of down and down and down as the years have gone on. The 3-point contest has actually been the best part about All-Star Weekend the past 5 or 6 years, because most you actually do have stars that regularly compete in it, from your Steph Curry's, Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, bunch of all-stars, man, compete because they want to showcase what they can do. And when you're out there shooting shots, there's a lot of pride on the line to get those shots in. Damian Lillard was going through the three-peat, winning 3 years in a row. Couldn't quite do it. I actually think that the previous few years, the contest has been better just in terms of showing how hot these guys can get from three. Didn't quite get to that point this year. Damian Lillard had a kind of a disappointing showing in the contest this year. But Tyler Hero of the Miami Heat ended up winning the competition. Good for him. I thought it was an all right 3 points contest, whatever. And then the slam dunk contest, man. That slam dunk contest has just been a travesty most of the time in the last, like, I'd say 8 or 9 years. I remember the first one I saw that was really just terrible was the 2010 one, where just like, what the hell was that? And just it feels like every other year, it's really just kind of a dud of a slam dunk contest with your G Leaguer, Mac McClung, coming in and really just saving the dunk contest, to be honest. You have a G Leaguer, little white dude coming in, and the guy is electric when it comes to his creativity, his hops, the dunks themselves is unbelievable. And the dunks that he put forth were amazing in terms of how he really showcased Blake Griffin, how lame Blake Griffin's dunk was. I mean, we knew it wasn't that great a dunk anyway. But in terms of actually, instead of just jumping over the hood of the car, jumping over the actual top of the car, doing a reverse slam, that was great. And all of other stuff is creativity, hitting the ball off the rim and then dunking it, is concentration, great. Everyone else that takes place in the slam dunk contest, all of these other no names, it's not really my issue is that they're the no name players. It's just that you watch them get out there, and I'm like, guys, did y'all even practice these dunks at all? Because it's just miss after miss after miss, to where by the end, when they get the dunk in, or sometimes they don't even get the dunk in. It's just that time runs out, and you're like, what the hell was that? You had all this time to prepare, practice this dunk. You get out there, lay a dud. I don't know if the lights are too bright because, again, these are kind of no-name players, and they just have the entire NBA world looking on them at that moment. But it's just repeat after repeat. Just all these misses, man, from these no names, just really takes the life out of the dunk contest. And had it not been for Mac McClung, I think this actually would have been the dunk contest would have been done already. There would have been something major done just to either get rid of it, majorly change it up, just something. Because that dude has single-handedly saved the dunk contest 3 years in a row now, and he is electric. Would it be nice for some actual stars to compete? Absolutely. When you have guys like John Morant, Zion Williamson, unbelievable dunkers, but I guess they have to worry about getting healthy or staying healthy for the most part. So maybe that's why they don't take part in it. But overall, the slam dunk contest, man, it's really just something where it's like, I guess unless it's Mac McClung, you just have a dud of event. And speaking of the dud of events, we get to the NBA All-Star Game itself. Now, when I was a kid, man, growing up, watching basketball and All-Star Weekend, I would always look forward to the NBA All-Star Game because it was the ultimate pickup game between the best players in the world. Super simple. Players from the West Coast, players versus the East Coast, battling it out. You'd have a fun game, fun spectacle, all that. But over the last few years, man, the All-Star game, as we've seen, has just been atrocious. Just not competitive, players not putting any effort whatsoever, to where it's not fun to see dunks, layups, and threes if there's not actually any defense being played. It just makes for a lousy, just terrible TV product and just watch in general. So they've tried all these gimmicks to make the All-Star game better when it comes to having, starting off with having the team captains a few years ago. And that was okay for a bit, but then the game still got to a kind of a lackluster point. They tried to go back to the classic East-West format last year, and it was just a mess of a game. You're talking about over 200 points scored by a team. Even the commissioner, Adam Silver, was disgusted when he handed them the trophy last year. So we knew that last year was a tipping point, that something was going to get done to make things more competitive. So this year you have this weird tournament thing. Everything's got to be a goddamn tournament now, where you have like three separate teams of the pool of all stars. You had the Rising Stars game. The winners from the Rising Stars game got to compete in this sort of four-team tournament thing. And did it work? Yes and no. I think it was definitely a much more competitive product than what we've gotten over the last few years. Those games, the last few years for All-Star Game, absolutely terrible. Now, I do think that this format made it had some moments when it comes to actual competitiveness during the game, specifically when it came to the Rising Stars versus the OGs, Shaq's OGs, when it came to your older players, older statesmen in the NBA now with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, no LeBron. He sat out for really last minute, but whatever. That's a different story. And you could tell that that actually ended up being a real game of pride, at least in moments, when it came to those old heads trying to make sure that they didn't lose to the rising stars. So that was actually okay. All these other games, eventually it just kind of disintegrated into the same old thing where it just got kind of lazy, players not really trying. You have the announcers calling the game for TNT, Reggie Miller, Candace Parker. They're like, oh, here they go, squaring up for some defense. And you're like, there ain't no goddamn defense. It's just the same old stuff that we've seen over and over in the All-Star game, at least eventually. Like I said, it had its moments where it was okay, but you're just watching kind of a lazy, just non-effort kind of game. And I really don't get it just because you had years ago, like I said, when I was growing up watching the All-Star game, you had guys like Kobe, Kevin Garnett, Shaq, Allen Iverson, Vince Carter. These guys were going at it, playing legit basketball. Now, obviously, we're not asking, it's not the same kind of effort given in like game 7 of the playoffs or something like that, nor should it be. But it should just be a fun pickup game, but a legitimate game. That's what makes the All-Star game fun. And we just don't get that. And I think a big reason the tipping point with the All-Star game happened was when the three-point revolution really started in the NBA, roughly about a decade ago when the Warriors really started to get going, where because there's so much three-pointers just getting shot, you just have these segments where players are just launching three after three after three, more and more threes as the All-Star game has gone by over the years, to where because the court is so spread out, players just don't want to give that effort in covering the whole court. The lane's wide open. It's just nothing resembling an actual basketball game. Even the All-Star games from previous years, which, we're not saying it's like the most competitive, locked-in game ever, but it still feels like a legitimate game. And so in the end, I think it was, the Shaq's OGs, they won. Steph Curry won the MVP. Hey, you know what? It's taking place in San Francisco. Why not? But I just think it's all like, that these gimmicks for the All-Star game just don't last very long or going to help at all in the long term, to where I think next year it's just going to end up disintegrating into the same thing where you get lazy basketball, lame event. And it's just kind of a very unfortunate and just sad just because when NBA players during the league's, premier mid-season event are showing a lack of effort and not caring, eventually consumers are going to start not caring. I mean, you saw what happened to the Pro Bowl for football. Eventually, as the years went on, players just started to give less and less effort during the Pro Bowl. For eventually, the league just says, you know what, forget about this. Y'all don't want to give the effort. We'll make the emphasis more on like an actual skills competition, and we're going to put flags on you so y'all can play flag football out there. But at least I can understand with football the idea of a football all-star game, especially after the season's done, or even during if the season was happening, isn't something that's a great idea. Just the nature, brutal nature of football, injuries, all that. I get NFL players just not wanting to give it that kind of effort. But for basketball, like I said, people aren't asking for major, super, ultra competitive playoff effort, but it should resemble a normal pickup game between the best players in the world. And again, this year wasn't nearly as bad as the last few years. Those were absolute travesties, and those are well documented. But I still don't think it's great, and nowhere near what the All Star game should be. If you want my suggestions in terms of how to make the NBA All Star game viable, something fun, and incentivizing players to actually play hard, I know what a concept. What I would do is I would go back to your classic East versus West format. No more of this team picking bullshit and any of that. Classic East versus West, like it's been for the majority of NBA history. And I would incentivize it, not with money, because them players making way too much money as it is. But what I would say, and this would definitely get some effort out of the players, that the winning team between East versus West in the first round of the playoffs, you only have to win 3 games to advance instead of 4. And I think that would really make things like be like, whoa, adding a level of urgency to the All-Star game and making players actually play legitimately. I don't think as an incentive, it's anything that's too extreme. We're not saying like you get like home field advantage, home court advantage. That's what baseball would do. And I've always thought that that's a bit extreme, making an exhibition game count that much in terms of the playoffs. I think that's like, I don't know about that. But I think in terms of having to where like, only having to win 3 games in your first round, how it used to be years ago, I think that would be good because that would give a level of urgency, especially to your older players, and really actually all players to realize that, hey, we can save one more day of travel, one more game of wear and tear. We win this game. First got to win for the 3 games first round makes it seem a lot easier. I think that would incentivize things a lot more to where players were like, all right, let's go get it. It's not the most extreme of incentives either way when it comes to something too high or too low. I think it's just right. So incentivize that in the first round, you only have to win 3 games instead of one to advance. So I think a lot of players would be behind that. I think it would add a lot more urgency to the All-Star game. It sucks that you have to go to those kind of lengths to make the All-Star game viable, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Again, I don't think this year was anything just super awful or whatever. Definitely better than previous years, but I still don't think it's good. I also think there's just way too much stuff in between the actual games when it came to commentary from Kevin Hart, who's a funny dude, but just felt like there was just like these 10-minute segments in between the games. It was like, man, just get back to a fun pickup game with like some halftime entertainment. That's it. It's just got to be simple basketball. We don't need these gimmicks of team picking. We don't need to have, you know, we don't need to have this score like target scores of 40. But All-Star game was fine for years when it came to, just playing a regular game. Maybe something else that could help. And again, with the whole 3-point line thing, I might even eliminate the 3-point line in the All-Star game just so that, there's not just this jacking up of threes and all that. Just because it's like once players, I know this is years ago, once Steph Curry and Damian Lillard just started launching these half-court shots, that's when the game started to feel really lazy. So those are kind of my thoughts on the NBA All-Star game, how to fix it, what I thought of this year. It sucks that the All-Star game has gotten to this point, but that just kind of shows it's the current state of the league when it comes to players not caring. And more importantly, way too many three-pointers being shot. So even if this year wasn't the worst thing ever, there's still a lot of improvement that can be done to make All-Star Weekend viable, certainly in more than one way, that's for sure.